So recently I was in the UK and learned a lot that I think is very important to business owners. So in this episode, we're going to talk about a couple of things that I experienced, a couple of things that I learned that are very common to business owners and how it's coming to running your business. And it's the type of stuff that your bookkeeper isn't telling you, but should be having conversations with you about these things. So stay tuned for today's episode. Welcome back to the show. And also I want to say welcome to my co-host, Lola Turner. Welcome back, Lola.
Hi, thank you so much. I should be telling you welcome back. Okay. I was going to give you the title of Terrell the Explorer, but it doesn't quite work as well as Lola the Explorer. So I'm just going to keep that. But welcome back to you, Terrell, from across the pond. Cheers. And you definitely picked a very opportune time to be on your way to London. You always seem to be in the right place at the right time for whatever reason. I mean, it is phenomenal to me. I remember just for our audience, when I talk about Terrell being in the right place at the right time, Terrell was in Brazil, okay, for the World Cup in Brazil. And just for people who are football, those are the people who are true fans, call it football, okay, not soccer. But for people who are football, also known as soccer in America fans, you know that a World Cup in Brazil has been like the dream of every like enthusiast like that is like really diehard football fan. Because I mean, for those that don't know, like Brazil is like a pretty like just, I mean, Brazilians are pretty intense. I think just any South American, actually most of the world with the exception of America, now it's picking up, are really big diehard soccer fans, and maybe certain parts of Asia. But I remember when you were in Brazil for the World Cup, and that was like a historic like moment. And it was one of those things where it's like, you know, never thought about like, man, it doesn't really happen very often. And then on the way to London, actually at the airport, when you're getting ready to board your flight, you find out that the Queen of England has passed away. Like, what are the odds? You're on mute, Terrell.
No, sorry about that. I will
what are
say
the odds?
is I think it is, I will say that being in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, I think has been a very consistent story for me in so
Yeah,
many different ways. Because I mean, I think with that is, the trip was already planned. Trip was planned months ago. Like I bought my
it's
tickets
true.
like back in, the summertime.
Yeah.
And I'm walking through the airport, and I see several people gathering around a TV. I'm like, oh, okay, what are they looking at? And like I said, literally, I'm walking to my gate to board my plane to fly to London. And on the television, they announced that the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, has passed away. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I am literally getting on a plane headed to London. I
Mhm.
actually, and it was an early flight because I'm like, I'm headed to London because in the next, let's say, 9 hours, I actually have a meeting that's like a few blocks away from Buckingham Palace. And so I'm
Yeah.
just like,
Now
this is
you
going to be
left
interesting.
here. Yeah, you left here at like what, like 4 p.m. What time was your flight? Eastern time.
I forget. It was something like, I would arrive in the UK at like 6 a.m. UK time.
Okay. Okay. So it was like maybe like a 10 or 11 a.m., 11 p.m. I don't remember the exact time, but the point is we were getting the news when people in the UK were sleeping. So pretty much when you arrived, or I guess were in bed. So when you arrived, it would kind of be the first day of like this announcement that
Yeah.
just hit, and this news that was just shared. So I'm curious, did they say anything on the airplane about this? Like once you guys had boarded, was there any kind of announcement, or was it just,
I mean, it was
kind
a
of business
constant
as
thing
usual?
of it was a constant thing of like, hey, expect delays. Was what people
Okay.
said, like, hey, as many may be aware, the royal family has announced that the Queen Elizabeth II, has passed away. Expect delays, and I think it was one of those things where, you know, no matter how much you plan ahead for this, I do think for
Mhm.
so many people, they didn't know what to expect. They didn't know what it was going to be like. I mean, she had been in power for 70 years. So they were
Right.
like, we don't know how people in London are going to respond. Just, expect delays. Expect delays is what they kept saying. Like, even when we landed, hey, if you're taking a connecting flight, please expect delays. If you're checking into a
Mhm.
hotel, please
Please
expect
expect delays.
delays. And
Yeah.
so it was an interesting time. And like I said, I had a meeting. I was supposed to meet with the awesome team over at LiveFlow. We were supposed to meet that morning. They had gotten behind on some things. Like they had some, things that came up that they were trying to navigate as well. They actually had a new hire that was going through the interview process, or someone that was going through the interview process that was coming in to meet them in their office that day. Like I
Mhm.
said, they're not far from Buckingham Palace. So like they had to adjust because that person was like coming in from another European country that morning. So it was a very interesting. But I do think, like I said, even with that, there was still some amazing things that came out of it that I didn't
Mhm.
expect. Because like I said, it was evening time when I left here in the US. And when I landed
Yeah.
in the UK, it was like 6 a.m. It was like 6 in the morning in the US. So it was 6 in the morning UK time. So I really had no time to like, go take a nap or anything. It was just like, hey, you got to get on it and go get going for your day or whatever. So
That's honestly the best way to that's the best way to do those trips when you are in a new place, because if you try to go take a nap, I mean, your body doesn't adjust as quickly, in my opinion, to kind of being on a different time zone.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, so I went to the hotel, dropped my bags off, and then hop back in a taxi to hit back to the airport so I can take the train into London. So I get into London. Meeting got a little delayed with the live flow team because, like I said, they had to navigate some stuff. So I was like, hey, I'll take care of some other stuff while I'm there or whatever. But the interesting thing I wanted to start off with, which was when the live flow team and I did meet. So met up with the live flow team. They're working on some stuff, and Anita, one of the founders there, I was like, hey, let's go around this coffee shop, grab some coffee. She was tired. She was like, I know you're tired, because at this point, like, I had already been up for like what 28 hours or whatever straight or
Did
whatever.
you
She was
sleep
like,
on the plane?
I got maybe like an hour or maybe hour and a
Oh,
half of sleep
wow.
on the plane.
That's not a lot. That's not a
Um,
lot for a 6 or 7 hour, it's a 7-hour flight, right? I think, yeah.
yeah. And so I
It's not
mean,
a lot.
so we went to this coffee shop. So we're standing in line in this coffee shop. And she's telling me how amazing the coffee is and stuff like that. And so now for those that may not have met Anita before or saw the interview with her on the show, Anita is she grew up in from she's from Russia. So she has a Russian accent. So Anita is half Russian, half Kenyan. So Anita has a little bit of a well, not a little. She has a Russian accent. So she's talking, and then I start responding and answering, and there happens to be a guy who runs a hedge fund or runs an investment fund in London, but he's from California. So when I start talking, the guy is like, "Hey, excuse me, where are you guys from?" And Anita says, "Oh, I live here in London, originally from Russia." And I say, "I'm from North Carolina." It's like, "Oh, and you don't really meet a lot of Americans like in this part of the city here and stuff."
Yeah.
And so we start talking, and it comes out that the guy he runs an investment fund, and he was looking for, like I said, it's always looking for companies to invest in. Now, the thing that I think that stood out to me, I think as a phenomenal business lesson, I think is, you know, the conversation actually got a ton of traction. Now I'm not saying that,
Mm,
hey, that LiveFlow decided to move forward because LiveFlow had already raised capital, and I think
mhm.
they're in a good place where they need to be with capital. But part of the reason the conversation I think moved so smoothly is because when the guy asked, what does, what she do? She was talking about the company, and he was like, oh, what does the company do? And she was like, actually, here's one of our happy customers. Um,
Talk about a sales. Talk about a perfect sales pitch. Listen, you want a quick review? Here's one in person. That was phenomenal timing. You see what I mean? Always in the right place at the right time. Look at that. Yeah,
And so, it's one of those things that made me like, I think about the times when I've raised, help companies when we've gone through the process of raising capital. Like, you can put whatever you want on your paper, you can put whatever numbers you have in your assumptions. But one of the things that tends to draw a lot of confidence is if your investors can have a conversation with a happy paying customer. Like, it shoots the confidence through the roof, because to that
hmm
person, he's like, hold on, you have a customer of yours that lives in North Carolina, flew all the way over here to London to meet with you in person, and he's a paying customer, and he's happy, and he's telling other people about the product. Like, this may be something I need to like pay more attention to.
exactly.
And and I think about that even for our business, is asking myself, it's just like, how often are we, creating opportunities, or even just capturing the customer experience enough to use that in, hey, when we're talking to potential clients, like,
Yeah,
hey, because they want to know, are other people happy with your service? Are other people
exactly.
paying attention to what you're doing? And so, I mean,
Exactly.
I thought it was definitely that right place, right time kind of situation.
Always, always, always on time. I swear, I just kind of thought about that Ja Rule song, "Always There, Always on Time," but I digress. Carry on.
No, I think that, what I want to ask from you is just, kind of your perspective on. I will say, I'll share this picture. Like, Anita and I took a picture when we went back into the office for the live flow team. They're working on some really cool stuff, and I definitely gonna talk about like some of the stuff we're doing with them as far as like the Google Data Studio financial dashboard, like automating financial dashboards, because a lot of times that can be very, very complicated for a lot of people. Is trying to figure out, dashboards and stuff like that. Whereas, one of the things that we figured out at TL Turner Group is how to create dashboards using Google Data Studios, and then automating it with using the live flow. So we've had some meetings and we've talked about that. Like, what has been your impression kind of with, the live flow tool, and even just your interaction with Anita?
I mean, I think it's been great. I think Anita's really focused on my experience has been great with the life flow tool. My experience has been great with Anita. I think Anita's really focused on how can she help customers best leverage the product that is available to them. I think sometimes it's easy for you to get, we've talked about this in prior episodes, and this is our motto. The biggest thing for us at the TL Turner Group is ensuring that our clients have the best resources, right? That they need. Sometimes those resources might not necessarily be us, but I think that comes with doing what's in the best interest of the customer. And I think that's where Anita's focus is, right? Like, for example, she proposed the Google Data Studio idea to us, right? We had talked to her and mentioned it in one of the reviews and the feedback we'd given her about, hey, this is something we use for our own clients. And she was like, well, what do you think about doing a webinar or some sort of training on this or even selling this? And I think it was really a great opportunity and just kind of an emphasis on the fact that, hey, she is really thinking about doing what's in the best interest of her clients. And I think that's ultimately what really makes a big difference in product offering, right? Like we talked about on a prior episode, like your customer's experience is really the biggest one. And if you're thinking, how do I leverage a relationship to basically provide a better offering for my clients and for my customers, you're constantly thinking about how to develop and improve what you're doing. So definitely a great experience working with her and the LifeFlow team, and just a great experience using the tool overall. So um, I am curious to kind of get your thoughts, Terrell, and with being on kind of both ends of the discussion on um, what what where LifeFlow currently is and with the business growing, kind of what has been your, like, for example, what was the interaction with the hedge fund person, and kind of after you provided your feedback, you mentioned he was interested in kind of further exploring, but what has been just the overall reaction when you kind of talk when you talk to people and people get that first I guess first interaction with a customer that's happy with the product?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when I think about just any time of raising capital, like I said, if you
Hmm.
have a customer who is happy with the product, I think what it does is it opens the ears of the person who could potentially invest or the person
Hmm.
who could potentially do business with you. Because,
Yeah.
one of the things that, when it comes down to a business is like a lot of people have great ideas, but the real question of whether or not you're going to be profitable is how many paying customers can you actually get? Now, also, there's the other factor of can you manage your costs, but can
Right.
you get paying customers? Like that becomes a very, very big thing. And in one of the things investors are trying to figure out is, and even potential customers, if they're going to do business with you, they want to know is who else are you doing business with? Are they happy with what you're doing? Because there's no need for me to understand your technical expertise if nobody's buying your product. I mean, if nobody's buying your product, like I really don't
Yeah,
care
that's true.
how technical your product is. So I think, after that, what it did is, kind of open the conversation a little bit more. And one of the things he brought up about, he was talking about something he's seen with a lot of companies, whether it's that, in the UK, that funds often undercapitalize the businesses. So the businesses have to keep coming back for more capital. And it's just like finding
Mm,
that sweet spot of do you have enough cash flow for the runway that you need to grow like you need to grow? And
right.
and I think that's an important factor because then we you talk a little bit about that because when you're growing a business, there's a certain amount of capital and cash you need to invest and spend to get the business growing before the business starts paying for itself. Because especially if you're a tech company, you're going to spend a lot more money on the front end because it takes a
Hmm.
little time for like that recurring revenue to build, and eventually it builds to where the amount of income coming in is greater than the outflow. But initially you're going to spend a lot more cash than you're bringing in, and so you want to make sure that you have enough cash flow on that front end to get you through that hurdle to where you start turning cash flow positive.
Yeah, that's good. No, that's really good perspective, and I think that's important on that's an important point on that. What are some of the other experiences that you learned and kind of want to share from your trip?
Yeah, I mean, I think after the meeting with Live Flow, like I said, we had a great time. Also, I will say this also is, another great like right time, right place is they were in the process of interviewing a new potential employee. And so he was still there when I came to their office. And
Uh-huh.
so, as part of their interview process, and the guy was asking, and then he was like, "Hey, if you want to talk to a customer of our product, like, hey, you can find out like how he likes working with us." And so the guy started asking me questions, and I gave him honest answers, and to where it's just like, I believe that it helped improve his perception of the company that he was applying to work for, because it's like, hey, I gotta like again, here's one of your customers who lives in North Carolina, flew 6 hours over here to meet you, and he's happy about the product. And then also the founders and I, we sat down, and there's some new features that we were working on, some things we were figuring out,
Yeah,
of things, new solutions that they're going to roll out to the rest of their client base, to where,
exciting.
which is why I like working with them, is because, the questions I have aren't just like, hey, here, just
Yeah,
answer my question. We actually work
that is
together
a
to bring
positive.
resolution to it. And I think for us is that becomes a very valuable lesson of when you're working with your clients. Like for
Hmm.
some of our clients, one of the things that we realize is that most business owners aren't going to sit and read the entire, P&L or balance sheet.
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
oftentimes there's a few things that they really want to know. So one of the things
Yeah.
that we started doing with some of our restaurant clients is we started creating like weekly dashboards, because we realized they really only need to manage about four different numbers on a very weekly basis. And so what we
Mhm.
started doing is we started actually just creating simple dashboards that we could share with them. So every Monday morning, they and their managers are going to get this very simple dashboard. And so they'll be able to do a quick financial pulse check. Because one of the things we realized is like after having conversations with them, we started realizing like, what do you really need? Like, and they didn't need the full P&L. What they just needed is, I need to track these four numbers every single week. And if I'm doing good on these four numbers, the rest of the business is really going to kind of work itself out. And so we started creating like, tools like that and really changing our approach and collaborating with our clients and our customers, because at the end of the day, we're there to add value to them. And
Right.
that may mean taking a slightly different approach to being able to deliver that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I agree.
Yeah. And I think it's why a lot of people like doing business with us, is because they understand, like, one is we know who we serve well. I mean, you got service-based businesses, specifically, law firms, agencies, and there are a couple restaurants and churches that we work with. Outside of that, we usually tend to recommend that they work with someone else. Like, people come to
Mhm.
me a lot that are software based, and I'm just like, hey, got a good contact down in Atlanta. The team over at Acuity, they are great at working with software companies. Maybe I should connect you with them. Or there's some people come to me as like, hey, we have a coaching type business. We don't really work with a
Mhm.
lot of coaches from a accounting and finance standpoint, but I got some other contacts, some people I can connect you with. They would be a better fit
Right.
to help you. And I think
Right.
by us knowing who we work well with, and then also I think us knowing that, hey, here's somebody that can work better for you, because we do what we do very well, but we
Mhm.
tend to focus on what we do well. And we collaborate with our clients to create those tools and resources to really help add the most value.
Yep. No, agreed. I think that again, it goes back to something that we've talked about, like niching down and being very specific about what it is that the clientele that you serve helps you to tailor your offerings to meet their needs and to provide, like you talked about, like with the weekly dashboard, to provide the type of support that immediately addresses the pain points that they have on the financial side of their business. Agreed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will say the last thing that I wanted to talk about was, coming now after being, went to the UK, went to London, met with them, and then I actually flew over to Paris, which we did a whole new conversation about Paris and the business lessons, because I was teaching finance at a business conference there in Paris. We did a whole nother episode about that. Great insights, talking about the lessons from the cooking class, the pastry chef class, the making chocolate, all of
Go
that
watch the
fun stuff.
episode. Don't give them
Um,
all the details. They need to go back and watch the full
but
episode, and you can even see the exclusive photos.
but then I came back to London because I wanted to stop to see our nephews, Lola's oldest sister and her husband, spend some time with them. And another, like, timing is being in London. Like, when I came back, that was when they had the funeral for Queen Elizabeth planned, to where
Yep,
it's like being back in London for a
on the
very
day of the
historic,
funeral.
yeah, the day
Yeah.
of the funeral, of being able to, for the people of London and the people around the world who wanted to say, their farewells, and to watch the funeral service for Queen Elizabeth II. And I do think a lot that stood out to me was, one is, in a matter of 10 days, all of the things that they had to pull together, all the logistics to make it work. Like, I know they had been planning it for years. And I think while I was there, I heard some of the news, in which it was interesting to be there in the country when it happened, because I talked to people who were here in the US they were telling me what they were hearing on the news. And then I was actually in London when it was happening, to where I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's true. That's not necessarily true. Or, hey, the people here in
Fact
London,
checker.
they're more focused on this.
Fact checker. Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah. Let's not get I want to say something, but let's not get derailed. Continue. I
so,
have so many comments about that.
so I will say is, like, having been in that area, like around the palace, and like I said, I was there like 10 days before the funeral because I was there meeting with the live flow team in kind of like that general area. So I was there. But then when you saw some of the, some of the pictures, some of the events of just how, they had really transformed that area, the decorating it. I mean, all the additional security that they brought in, all of those different things, for the visual and the experience of this. I mean, there were literally people in line for hours, and there were people that were
Yep.
showing up with tents and sleeping bags, sleeping out there so they can get, their chance to pay their respects to the queen. Prior to the funeral service, there was a ton of people that showed up, a lot of things that happened there. And I would say, for the sake of time, I really want to focus on the thing that stood out to me the most for that entire funeral service were the service members that were responsible for carrying the casket. Because,
Mhm.
I've been a pallbearer in a funeral before. And one thing I will say is a casket is not light by any means.
I can
Um,
imagine.
and when you have to put that on top of all of the eyeballs around the world, television cameras are focused on these guys and these guys have the pressure of making sure they don't make any mistakes, no
Right.
mishaps happen, that, hey, the flowers on the top or the crown doesn't like shift or that pillow doesn't fall out of place. And one of the things that I was very impressed by was their ability to stay synchronized the entire time,
Mm.
because they had to actually carry it from, it wasn't like they just carried it from the church to the hearse. It's like they literally had to walk this casket down the street, march it up the steps into the chapel. And the chapel it's a pretty big, cathedral, Westminster. I mean, I think it seats about like 2,000 people. So it's a really big
Mm.
building that they had to march it in, and then they had to come pick the casket up, take it back outside, and then load it onto another vehicle so that they can be transported. And one of the things that really, really stood out to me, like I said, is how well they were synchronized, to where even without, like, as you can see, the people on the left side, they can't see the people on the right side. And it's not like they
Yeah.
can actually just talk and say, hey, turn left and stuff like that, to where it's like they really had to have a ton of coordination and cooperation to do this flawlessly, on top of all the pressure of all the cameras.
Even the fact that they're like, if you're watching the video, you can see their hands. The guys on the right side, their left hand is on the back of, it looks like on the back of the person on the other side that's carrying the casket, which means that they're only using one hand to support the casket, which for me, as a arm day enthusiast, that's a lot of weight to carry on just one arm. Like if I'm thinking about, if you're lifting with your legs, and you need at least two hands to properly secure it. So it's pretty impressive, just the level of coordination that's required to only hold the casket with one hand on the other side while the other person is doing the same exact thing on their side, and ensure that they basically stay connected. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, and I think to me, as I was watching this part of it, one of the things that really stood out to me is like, you know, of course, taking in the experience and paying the respects of the service and observing. But even as I thought about, like, from a business perspective, is, if you're gonna have any kind of big impact, like, you're gonna need to hire more people, or you're gonna have to work with contractors, like, you're gonna have more people. And one of the things that ends up hurting a lot of businesses is that as they grow, they tend to
Mhm.
lose this sense of coordination, meaning they're missing
Mm.
deadlines, or they're not communicating well with their people and stuff like that. And one of the things that I recognize, like, as a leader, even in the TL Turner group, is how do we keep the coordination between, having a remote team? Because some of our team is in the Philippines,
Right.
and some of the vendor partners that we're working with, they're located in the US. It's just like, how do you keep that cohesion and cooperation to make sure the customer's situations, the customer's, business, that we are fully supporting that. And I think it's just how you have to be very intentional. Like they talked about like the hours that these guys practice together. They talked about, even as you can see, the gentleman in the back that's holding the larger hat and carrying the sword, like when needed, like he would communicate or give them instructions of like, hey, when they were going up the steps, they also would
Mm,
have a person who would step in the front, to where both sides they can look and see the guy in the front. And
yeah.
when the guy in the front would walk up the steps, they knew in their mind, hey, steps are coming because I can see the guy in front of me walking up the steps. So I mean,
Right.
there was a whole lot of unseen things that went into them being able to do this part of the service, so well, because this entire national and global event went off without any major issues. And so I mean, I think it's something that we're all trying to manage every single month, is how do we support our clients in a way without there being, or to limit the number of issues that come up, so that our clients are still getting the value that they're paying us for.
Yeah, that's really good. And I know these people are always going to be known as the, hey, like, hey, I was, grandpa was one of the people that carried Queen Elizabeth's casket in 2022. But no, but all jokes aside, I think it's definitely a very important lesson about just navigating business, and an important lesson about just navigating the journey of entrepreneurship and the ups and downs. Like one of the lessons I think that we talked about and had discussed off camera is just sometimes when giving, one of the things that my sister who lives in the UK, and she mentioned, which I don't think a lot of people gathered this, people that were outside the UK, was just the unity that it brought in the moment of being going through this news of the Queen of England passing. And if I think a lot of people outside the US, there was a lot of mixed feeling, or outside of the UK, there was a lot of mixed feelings. But overall, I will say my sister's take on it was very interesting, because she said, hey, there's people are mourning, and some people are mourning, some people are have their feelings about it, but all in all, what it's done is it's brought together the people of the British Empire or whatever, together. And one of the things that I thought about is just like we've talked about this before, is how do you navigate those tough moments in your business, right? When you have situations that happen that are either out of your control, or hey, are a little bit inevitable, or tough decisions that you've had to make, and really just giving people the space to manage through how they manage through it, but also kind of taking an approach and intentionality, and how do you use this as an opportunity to kind of um use this as an opportunity to bring people together to make sure that your company comes out of that situation better. So I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
that's
I
important.
I think that's a really good point, and I mean, it's something we can definitely dive into more in another episode. But I think that is a very real point that I even
Hmm.
noticed as well.
Hmm.
Because even when I talked to some people that were from the area of Wales, like they didn't feel the same level of emotional attachment to the royal family, the monarch,
Yeah.
and stuff like that, but there was still this sense of, when talking to them, it was like this sense of like, I'm not deeply emotionally connected to this, but I can respect the people who are kind of
Right.
navigating through this and stuff like that. Although, they were like, if you'd ask me any other day, I would have some very different things to say. But it's just like,
Hmm.
having that sense of, compassion for the people who are, but still, being true to what they believe. Because I think in any business, we all have to figure out how to live through that complex reality, to where not everyone's going to be happy about what we are doing. Not everyone's going
Exactly.
to agree, and not everyone should be happy or should agree. But it's just like, as leaders in businesses, and even, for us as, being accounting and finance professionals, oftentimes, you know, clients aren't very happy about the news and the information that we have to share, or the decisions we have to help them say, hey, yo, you got to make some tough decisions here. And I think it's just being able to figure out how do we wrestle with the complexity of the reality that we have, but
Mhm.
still being able to move forward and figure out like, hey, how do we move forward in a way that makes sense and that's effective? So, I mean, I think all in all, the London experience, part of the trip was a great one, a ton of great lessons. So I'm glad, like I said, it's another one of those right place, right time. So I'm another, I guess you'd say, global event that happens like once in a lifetime for many people. I can
Oh
say
yeah,
that I've been
indeed.
there for another one.
Indeed. And that is a phenomenal thing about being in the right place at the right time.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much for checking out today's episode. Until next time.